Come on, a bit more. I think they like you.
Oh, go on.
He planned it like that. Okay, we're going to open up the questions. You, Carol, make yourself comfortable.
Yes. Oh, I got you.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's fine.
Ah, perfect.
Oh, hello. I don't have my feathers on. I look better with my feathers on.
Nah.
So, do you have any questions then?
Yeah, it's so nice to have you. Thank you for coming out. We've really been looking forward to this. We're going to open this up to questions. I know a lot of people grew up with you. A lot of people are still growing up with you. Raise your hand. Doug will come around with a question. We'll get to all of you. Don't worry. And there's water.
We got a first question for you right here. What was it like working with Mr. Rogers?
It was funny because he had already been on our show. And for some reason, we had strange cameras then. And he didn't look good in the cameras. I said, gee, I hope he's not looking at the monitor because I thought the pictures were insulting. He said, Mr. Rogers is exactly like the man you saw on TV, his soft-spoken way. And I have a very close friend who is a teacher, and he said, my friends tell me I sound just like him. And I said, I don't think so. And he had never seen Mr. Rogers, so he had him on the air and at home. And he said, I don't sound like that. I said, no, you sound exactly like that. Yeah, so I was going to be on his show afterwards, and he
Just pushing him in a little.
thank you. And so he sent me a script of what I was going to do, and in the script it says, Big Bird knocks on door of Mr. Rogers' little house, where he changes his shoes, you know, and all that thing. And yeah, he welcomes me, and we go in, and he offers me a chance to be his goldfish. So I'm doing that, and then the script says that he says, what's it like in there, Carol? Why don't you take it off the head, see how it works, show us how it works. I said, so that's the problem part, because we can't take it off. And it was Jim Henson's. One time, we've been doing this show how long, and it has been just demonstrated by the fact that Big Bird was on the cover of Look magazine. And that magazine went out years ago. 48 years ago, I guess.
You've been doing it for 48 years.
Well, that's that was from the beginning. So, and the pictures were taken at the beginning. So, one of the photos inside had me sticking. At that time, Big Bird would lift off easily. So I was strapped on in different ways, and so I'm in the bird. And so I had, in order to breathe, that's why I stick my head out between the body and the neck, because the neck is about 3 feet long. So I'm reaching up like that, and his head is in my hand. That's why he's not a puppet. It's not a costume, really. It's a puppet. You're so big, you get inside. So
The photographer got a picture of Carol sticking his head out Big Bird and put it in Look magazine. And Jim was not very happy about that.
He said, don't ever let them take a picture of you sticking out of the bird, or out bird in part.
Yeah. So of course Mr. Rogers was told, I can't do that.
Yes, Mr. Rogers says, you have to do it. I said, I don't have to do anything. But I'll do it. But I can't do that. I can't take off the bird. I would not want to violate Jim's idea.
Well, the kids really hopefully not very, very young kids here. I know our friends down here, but, he's real, so you would never do that. So the solution was, that you came up with, I guess, was to put him in...
It reminded me of that picture in Alien, where the thing comes out of his chest.
The solution was to put Big Bird in Make-Believe Land, is that what it was called in Mr.
Yes.
Rogers' neighborhood?
Yeah.
And Big Bird was just there, so he was really Big Bird in Make-Believe.
So I said, okay, fine, that would be fine. And but while he was saying, you have to do this, you have to do it, and I said, I can't do it. And I said, my goodness, to myself, I'm arguing with Mr. Rogers. How could anybody have an argument with Mr. Rogers? And so he was awfully nice. He's exactly like he seemed. I'm sorry he didn't live a long time. But I think that tomorrow Mr. McFeely will be here.
He's just coming for a visit, I think. I don't think he's, one of the people who are signing. I think he's just coming to say hi. Well, this is his town.
It's his town.
So he can go anywhere he wants.
He's got delivery to make.
He's a wonderful guy.
Oh, no kidding.
Let's get another question. Next question.
Question right down front here.
How do you do Oscar? Do you stand next to him or do you go under?
Well, I'm sitting behind the trash can, and I'm reaching up with my both hands. And the back of the trash can is cut open with tape around the edge because it's made of metal. That way it won't get cut on jagged metal. And so, something funny.
It's hard to do because you got to go back there and squeeze up into it. But
I would say it's just as awkward to be Big Bird, Oscar, as it is to play Big Bird. They're both they're demanding physically, but in a different manner. As you see, when I got up on the stage, I'm having a problem with my left arm, which is actually affecting my whole body and my balance. And so it isn't that I can't go up the stairs. The cane is to steady me, so I won't fall down. So I've got very poor balance because I have a problem called dystonia, and this arm doesn't work anymore. However, just before, a few months before that, they decided they wanted me to do only the voices. They'd have young men doing the puppeting.
The very physical part.
I've become 83. I was 35 when I started this job, and I've been doing it ever since I was 35. And I'm a little older than that.
If only you could be like Big Bird and stay 6 for the rest of your life.
He's still 6 years old. And I am a few years older than that.
just a few.
Question right down front here.
So did you always have a desire to be in puppeteering, or is that something you fell into? Or?
Well, I saw a puppet show when I was 5, and there was no television when I was a child. And because I was born in 1933, the Depression had just ended. Well, no, that was the depth of the Depression, the worst time. My father was he had 2 other boys, and he was making $12 a week. But money was very different then, because he was able to rent a house, own a car, and feed a family of 5. It wasn't very classy, because I remember some of the meals were milk on soda crackers that have no salt. The salt wouldn't mix well with the sugar. We'd have to put on. We had plenty of sugar in our house, which is not the greatest thing, because my mother liked things sweet, and she also put about a quarter pound of butter on every piece of toast. I remember during the World War II came along some years after I was born, in 1942. Well, it was beginning of 42, December of 1941. And at one point we couldn't get butter or sugar and other things like that. I remember saying to my mother, how many people live in America? At that point it was about 120 million. We have a few, no more. People keep having more children. Anyway, I said, well, and how many people are in the military? About 3 million. So said, well, how come we had plenty of food when we had 120 million, but now there's only enough food for the people at the surface? Because you couldn't get butter, you couldn't get sugar. At one point, back in the 43 or so, by 1943, 44, supplies were few, and everything was rationed. But my father, we lived 15 miles from the watch factory where my father worked at the Waltham Watch Factory. And we had no heat in our house except for the kitchen and the dining room. And in Connecticut, it gets as cold as it does in Maine, up to 20 below zero. And if I had a glass of water left it beside on the bed, instead next to the bed, it would be frozen solid in the morning. That's how cold our house was. It was built made in 17 something, and it was classy, not classy at all.
But also, back to the question.
Okay.
When did you first start with puppets and how?
My mother made costumes and things for F. Lee Bailey's mother, who ran a very classy preschool thing. And I think that kids went up to 3rd grade. But they had wonderful events. My mother would make costumes for them. And so my mother would go get to the Pinocchio days, they call it.
Puppet shows.
Puppet shows. And I was fascinated. This is where I saw my second puppet shows. The first were some visiting young men and girls from high school, I think. Because when you're 5 years old, you don't know how old anybody is. I remember asking one kid on Sesame Street, one of the children, to be on the show. And I said, how old do you think I am? One said, 100. The other one...
30. 35.
Yeah. Was it 35?
You were very young then,
yeah? 35 when I got the job. Yeah.
The other said what?
And the other one said 17. I said, I like you better.
Tell about your puppet show in the morning.
So then well, the puppet show where the children came?
You know, the one that your first puppet show, really, you did in your own backyard?
Oh, yes. My first show in 1942, I was 8 years old. And I found a puppet for 5 cents at a rummage sale at the church. And I had a nickel. So my show began with nickels worth of puppetry. And I don't know what I did. I think I did something like, if I knew you were coming, I would have baked a snake. Instead of a cake.
That's worth 2 cents, I think.
2 cents, I had 16 people. Made 32 cents. I said, I'm going to be rich. And I started doing puppets. That was my first puppet show. Can't imagine what it was like. I had a stuffed green flannel snake for the snake part.
You've been doing puppets really ever since you was a little boy. But you were
I decided I wanted to do puppets as a grown-up, but puppetry wasn't very... And television came along about 1948, and at least in our area. And my father astounded us by buying a television set, $800 for a 7-inch picture. So the box was the size of this top. Little tiny picture. And he got a magnifier to put in front of it. And it was all distorted because, and he always had a certain seat. But you got only good seat would be exactly right in the middle. That was Dad's. He bought everything for himself, nothing much for us.
Probably only made $12.
Well, he only made, but even during the war, he worked 60-hour weeks, making 60 cents an hour at the factory. And he was the only one that could run these fully automatic machines made in 1912. Wire would go at one end, and after 52 different things that come out, little tiny screws, so big they looked like dust. And you couldn't see that they were actually had
pull through.
A little lot for watches.
A little tiny slot, and a watch, they're very tiny because they made little tiny women's watches. They're only the size of a dime. And so...
But as you got older and he got more serious about doing puppets, one of the great things for anybody who is interested in puppets is to look up an organization called the Puppeteers of America, and that's where Caroll, you joined it, and you meet other puppeteers and other kinds of puppets and everything, and that's where Jim Henson discovered Caroll. He was at the Puppeteers of America Festival looking for someone to be this idea he had, Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch, for this new show, and he saw Caroll's show and he said, this is the guy I want, and he asked him if he'd come join the Muppets, and the rest is history.
What year was that?
1969. And I recommend any young person, it doesn't matter if you're very young or not, but a lot of people, there's quite a few puppet shows in America, and they belong to the Puppeteers of America generally. They're smart, because it doesn't cost a lot, and it comes with a lovely magazine 4 times a year, full color, and it's really pretty. They used to be rather amateurish when I joined, and now they're this beautiful, slick magazine comes full of photos of puppets, stories. So I'd say that puppetry is a good way to make a living. I love it.
Let's take another question.
Got one right over here for you.
Thank you. I saw your movie, of course, and it was fantastic. There's two very specific moments in the movie that stand out to me anyway. One is when you sing at Jim's funeral in the Big Bird costume. I dare anyone to not cry watching that scene.
Me too.
And then the other at the end of the movie when you reunited with the young lady from China. So could you speak about, and are you still in contact with her now?
I'm still in contact with, she in the movie she was called Xiao Fu, which means little lotus. And she was a beautiful little girl who was 5, but they had to mention, they had to say that she was 6, because that was the minimum age for children could be on television in China. And so she was really only 5.
Yeah, she was young.
So anyway, she's a beautiful
Did anybody
girl.
here see Big Bird in China? Yeah. Did anyone here see I Am Big Bird?
Oh, yeah.
Great. So you can relate to what he's talking about.
Hi. Hi, Zoe.
Hi, Zoe. Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine.
Hey.
Yeah, Will.
Yes, we are still in touch with Lian Su. She goes by Lisa now. And we thank goodness for, the internet and texting and all that. So that's how we keep in touch. And of course, the other part of your question was about Jim's funeral. And it was the Henson children who asked Caroll if he would sing that song, because that was Kermit's theme song at Jim's memorial.
It's not that easy being green.
That was probably the hardest thing he ever had to do, but I don't know how you ever got through it. It was amazing. It was.
I didn't cry when I sang the thing, although I think part of it was crying inside. They didn't show it in the song, but I cry when I see it.
Yeah.
And I think Big Bird did a good job.
It was quite important.
I was very upset when I saw the playback after the thing, because they assigned a man to help me dress into it, who had never dressed Big Bird, so that the costume, it's not really a costume, it's a puppet so big you get inside. But the bottom was hooked up on something in my back pocket.
Yeah, I don't think probably any of you would notice that it didn't quite look right, but the bottom was up a little higher than it should have been. So when he saw the playback later, he was just heartbroken because he thought it looked terrible, but I don't think
I know how it should look.
Zoe, what was your question?
Doug, can you go over and get Zoe's question on the far side?
I know she said she had
Stand up, Zoe, so she can...
She is. Hi there. Yeah.
Zoe over there in the back.
Okay. Here you go.
There you go.
All right, we're ready for Zoe's question. Everybody ready for Zoe's question?
Come on, you can ask us, Zoe. It's okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. She wants to know if you were also Bruno.
Yes. I used to do The reason why Bruno was created, it was the first and only puppet that I ever created, because Jim Henson always created the puppets, or he would draw the cartoonist, and then have his builders interpret his drawings. And so
With Bruno, Carol used to do live shows all the time. Big Bird would conduct the orchestra. And we needed to, Big Bird could walk out and the kids would be seeing Big Bird walk and there was real Big Bird. But if you wanted to have Oscar come out and sing a song with the orchestra, how do you get the guy with Oscar out without the kids seeing the guy?
Right.
So you came up with
I was
Bruno.
watching the Gong Show, and a woman was doing a very clever thing. She was the head of a baby in a baby carriage. Her head was where it belongs, but her feet were sticking out the bottom because she was a full-size person, and she had clown feet around backwards, so it looked like a clown was pushing the baby carriage, but the clown was a puppet, and nobody in it at all. And so I said, well, that gave me the idea that if I had Bruno and he had fake arms holding the trash can.
Fake arms holding the trash can, and Carol's arms would be coming up with Oscar through the trash can.
I would have, my head was in Bruno's head.
Right.
Normally that would be a costume-like thing.
Yeah.
Because Big Bird is not a costume in that his head is in my hand, way over my head. That's why he's so tall. He's 8 feet 2. But his top of his hand is way, the top of Bruno's head is...
No, not Bruno, Big Bird.
Oh, Big Bird. Oh, that's right.
We just went to Big Bird from Bruno.
So Big Bird is no, 8 feet, right.
8 feet 2 is Big Bird, but we'll go back to Bruno.
Yeah. So I was in Bruno's head. And he rarely spoke, but he was. Some said, but he said it's an insult to Italian people because Bruno's so stupid. He's not stupid.
Well, also, who says Bruno has to be Italian? They said, well, he's a garbage man. I said, so I know garbage men who aren't Italian. You're a weird person.
You know, Bruno was a Italian because his name is Bruno. And everyone knows anybody named Bruno is Italian. That's not true. There's a lot of Brunos in Russia, Bulgaria, Romania. It's a very Eastern name.
But Bruno is great also because when Carol first did him and he was going to be on stage, live stage with the orchestra, he would roller skate with Bruno out onto the stage with Oscar. I, of course, was having a heart attack on the side, thinking one day he's going in the pit. But it was a perfect illusion, because this guy was carrying Oscar, and it was the perfect way to get Oscar in and out. And unfortunately, Bruno has kind of deteriorated away. So we're
made out of foam plastic, and that, after it's stored in a warm place, it turns to dust.
Yeah.
Bruno is dust. And I said, well, why don't we rebuild him? Because we never have him in the show anymore. And I hadn't seen him in 7 years. And they said, well, he doesn't exist anymore. So why don't you build another one? They cost $20,000 to build.
But also, I think every once in a while you hear little rumors. With the 50th year of Sesame Street coming up in 2 years, there's going to be lots of Sesame Street special stuff.
Yeah.
And somebody recently threw out that they thought maybe they might bring Bruno back for just to have all the puppets back, So that would be great.
I hope it does, because I love Bruno.
Thank you for the good question, Zoe.
Yeah.
Yay, Zoe.
We have a couple questions over on this side.
Right.
Yes.
Over here. We have time for just a few more.
Thank you. This is going to be a weird question, but what's the difference between a Muppet and a puppet?
A Muppet is just the name that Jim and Jane Henson came up with. Muppet. Because they're puppets, but at first they told me that it was a combination of a Muppet, of a marionette, and a puppet. So.
But we're not sure if that's really true.
Because I then, about 20 years later, I said, you named them puppets because of the combination. They said, no, that's not true. So, but you told me that. No, we never said that. They did.
The basic definition, I think, would be a Muppet is a puppet that is made and licensed by Jim Henson Company. And any other puppet that has nothing to do with Jim Henson Company or anything like that is a puppet.
I went to a puppet festival in St. Louis, and there was the woman came up to me and she said, and all her puppets look like variations of Bert, but not quite as good as the puppet children. And so I said, I want to show this to Mr. Hanson. So I called my show The Muppets. I said, well, we're using that, And they invented the name, and so it's a copyrighted thing. And she said, oh, there's Jim Henson, I'll go show it. And I went over here, this I gotta see. Telling the man who invented the name Muppet and owned it, and telling him that her show is called The Muppets. And so I watched his face, and he's a very gentle guy, and he said, she says, these are pictures of my Muppets show. I said, oh, Muppets, really? That's interesting. And so he stood by. Oh, thank you, very, very nice, very nice. And so afterwards I said, but her show is stolen from your name.